holla.
It's all good. So in this film, you play a detective who's going undercover and infiltrating the KKK. And I saw an article somewhere about you not really liking the term code switching because of what it insinuates. You remember that?
I just, as it pertains to this story,
Right.
it wasn't code switching. But maybe code switching means something different to everybody. But if Ron was standing here talking to you, he would tell you this is how he talked to the Klan on the phone.
Yeah.
He didn't change his voice.
John David did an excellent job channeling the essence of 25-year-old me, yes. The only thing he had that I didn't have was a little bigger afro.
What he had to learn was the language of hate. He had to adopt that philosophy in inviting to making this case work. So in that regard, I guess he did switch. But as far as putting on a white voice or anything like that, that's not how he felt. And so I wanted to keep it true and honest to what his approach was, how he lived his life.
Right.
Now, me personally, I've had a whole bunch of experience. I went to a black college. I went to bar mitzvahs as a kid. I've been to Europe, as a kid. So what am I supposed to sound like? I stayed in Mount Vernon with my grandma before. What am I supposed to sound like? I sound like all these things, all these experiences.
Now, working with Spike Lee, and I'm sure you've seen films that he's done, and how does this movie, because I haven't seen it yet, does this movie give you like the Spike Lee feel?
I think it really does. I think tonally the movie was incredibly difficult to crack because it's, needless to say, one of the most serious, horrible things in our country, the Ku Klux Klan.
How close is this to the book? How close? Did Spike Lee do a good job bringing this to life?
No, Spike did a masterful job. Not good, he did a masterful job. It follows the book pretty close. They took some liberties here or there, but it all works within the telling of the story.
And the movie shows how idiotic the Ku Klux Klan is, and the way that the movie does that is with humor, but it's obviously a true story. It couldn't be done if the story wasn't true.
Right.
And very hard to get that tone right. I don't think there are a lot of people who could do it, and Spike is one of the few, if not the only one, who could really get that tone right, so that there's levity and entertainment in a topic that's a very, very serious topic.
When we first read Ron's book, which was an incredible account of his story, by the way, we knew, we had to stretch this out into a movie because what was in the book, it didn't immediately lend itself to being a movie, but it had all of the key ingredients.
Every story, even as great as Ron's story, you've got to, it's a great reality that he dealt with, and it's very dramatic what really happened. And we didn't have to make up a lot of that stuff. It's all very true, unfortunately. But there is an element to it that you do have to you got to marry the fictional parts with the real events, and you want those real events to really come to the surface and be as strong as they actually were in his life.
There's a lot of stuff in the book that is the craziest stuff in the movie. Most of the craziest stuff we didn't come up with. And when we read the book, we're like, okay, this has to be in the movie. This has to be in the movie. This has to be in the movie. And then there's some stuff in between that we have to make up to make it a movie. And so it was up to us to fill in those gaps.
I love it.
And so that's the real challenge, is that you've got to kind of turn it into a movie. And
make it entertaining and kind of comedic.
And make it entertaining. And the comedy, the humor comes from really dealing with how evil it all is.
Yeah.
And when you don't pull any punches, the absurdity of it comes to the surface, and that's where the humor is.
In the movie, you play David Duke. And we all know who David Duke is.
But I really know because I had to do a terrible amount of research on him.
Oh my God.
Worst month of my. It was like I got a call from Spike. You got the role. Happiest day, and then just the worst month followed it, where I had to read his autobiography, which is like his Mein Kampf. I had to watch old episodes of him on Donahue. I had to listen to his radio show. It was
I remember the Donahue episode.
Overwhelmingly terrible headspace to try to get into.
So you play a KKK member in Blackkklansman.
In the movie.
In the movie, not in real life.
No.
Good.
In real life, I'm a good Christian boy. A real one.
So I have to ask my first question. Since in this movie, John David Washington plays the role of, or goes undercover as a KKK Klansman. Now, if we could switch roles and you could be black for a day, what would you do?
I would love to be black for a day.
I could be black for a day. What would I do?
I would play more roles in Spike Lee joints.
Love it.
Like, for sure. I mean, I'd have more of a chance probably to do it too.
Well, that's a great question.
You know what? I would be with my family because I think even more than the white community, the black community really clings to family, I think. Like hip hop and country music, people like give the most flack to, but the reason I love those two genres the most is they're so tied into their roots and their families.
I'll tell you what I would do. You know, I had this conversation with Jordan when we were making Get Out, and I said, you know, there's a scene in Get Out where it's just like 2 or 3 black people and everyone's white, and they kind of wink at each other like, hey, we're the fucking three. There are 3 of us who are black and everyone else is white. And I said to Jordan, like, does that really happen? You know? That's what he said. That's what he said. He said it does happen.
And so if I was black for a day, I don't know. I'd hopefully have a better physique than I have right now, and I would chill with my family.
I would take you to a black church.
I would turn it on.
If you really could switch and be white for a day, what would you do?
What would I do? Oh, that's a good question. What would I do? I
would probably apply for a job.
I would go to the White House on behalf of every minority that's underrepresented and holler at the homie up there. So maybe I can get something done.
I like that.
That's an old joke. You know, I think that I would try to experience not having to worry about anything. I'd like to know how that feels, where I think one of the things that you know, in American life, that you kind of can check out if you want to. And it's a lot harder to check out when you're black or you're a minority or you're gay or whatever you are. And I think that checking out would be an interesting kind of experience to feel.
I would keep living my life how I live it, honestly. I don't know. My only experience is that as a black woman, so I've never really thought about that, honestly.
If I could be white for one day?
Well, I wouldn't be anything but myself for a day. I can't answer that because that gives them power. That means that I would do something differently if I looked differently, and I wouldn't.
If I could be white for one day? I don't know.
I said I'm gonna make it good.
I've never, you know what? I've been doing this for 30 years. I never heard that question before.
Dang, that's a good question. I don't know. Maybe, no, that sounds really effed up in my head. So I'm not gonna say it with my tongue and my lips.
I couldn't even imagine what that would be.
You were like, I feel like you were
I would probably try to get to the bottom of why I was white for a day.
I love it.
I'd spend the day solving the mystery.
Thank you.
And I'm so stunned that I can't even think of what. I'm who I am, you know, don't never try to be nobody else.
Good answer. I like it.
All right.
I respect it.
Thank you.